If you're having work done inside or around your house, the contractor performing that work should absolutely be insured. But what types of insurance should they be carrying? And more importantly, how can you verify that insurance is still in force? To answer these questions, I brought in Blake Wixson. He's the VP of Commercial Lines for PJC Insurance here in Springfield, Missouri. But before we get into the interview, if you find this video helpful, educational, or dare I say entertaining at all, go ahead and give it a like. Also, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And when you do, don't forget to hit that notification bell so that YouTube lets you know each and every week when we have new content available. With all that being said, let's get into the interview. So guys, what we want to do is we want to split this into kind of two different subject matters, the commercial side and the residential side. So the residential side being really from a homeowner's perspective. So not me as a fence company owner, but me as a homeowner, having contractors out. As a homeowner, what insurance should a homeowner ask for or ask to see from a contractor, say coming to build a fence at their house?
Okay. If it's a fencing contractor, always ask for a certificate of insurance up front.
Okay.
And have it where it shows the date that it was processed in and the policy periods, because you want to make sure that it's still in force. And if you have a question on it, you can always call their agent or their agency and say, hey, I'm getting a fence built by Ozark Fence.
Yep.
I'm calling just to verify coverage. And we can always reach out and say, yes, he's got coverage from this date to this date. You're always wanting general liability.
Yep.
You know, and you're wanting workers' compensation.
Sure.
You know, and commercial auto.
Yeah.
You know, if they're bringing their vehicles on your premise. And the big thing is because on the workers' compensation is a huge piece. Because if you get hurt on my property doing work at my house,
yep,
and you get hurt, you don't have coverage, you're going to sue me.
Sure.
So that piece of paper will protect you. And, you know, some people go the extent of getting additional insured, which that's a little much for a private residential.
But can we explain that, what that means, additional insured?
Yeah. So additional insured, you'll see it on your bigger contracts.
Yeah.
Big GCs say, hey, we want to be additional insured on your policy. And sometimes it costs if you have a blanket on yours, so it doesn't cost you. But what it does, it gives them the right to turn in a claim on your behalf.
Okay.
So say, Joe, you worked on my fence and you damaged my siding of my house. I can turn that claim in since I'm additional insured on your policy.
Okay.
So
and that really would protect, you know, on a larger project, would protect the project owner from someone that did damage but won't accept responsibility for it.
Correct. You know, and especially that big GC that has 50 guys working under him, he wants to be able to turn a claim in for their work if something were to happen from their work.
Sure.
So that, you know, it doesn't, he's the main guy.
Yeah.
So he's the main contact to him and the big owner. So
but you would mainly see that more on like a commercial project.
Yes.
You know, residential project, maybe you would see that on a much larger residential project. So when there's several different trades all on the same property.
Correct. Yeah. Majority of the time, it's just a certificate of insurance will satisfy the residential needs.
Okay.
Just make sure they have general liability, workers' compensation, and commercial auto if they're bringing vehicles on the premise.
Okay.
And
so they ask for their certificate. And then I always think it's a great idea once you get your certificate to call the agency and just make sure. Because you hear on the news and you hear stories and rumors about contractors that would go get a policy and then cancel the policy. You used to hear that a lot more in the past when you would only, you know, to get a new policy in effect, you'd only have to have a down payment.
Correct.
And then you'd be on monthly payments. It seems like anymore, the insurance agent or the insurance market in general has kind of caught on to that.
Yep.
And as the newer contractors, they generally have to pay quite a bit up front. Is that right?
Correct. And it's getting harder and harder for those individuals to get coverage if they've canceled the policy and rewrite it 6 months later and cancel it, because they're starting to show that. They're saying, well, he's been in business for 2 years. He's only had coverage for 3 months. So they aren't willing to just throw a policy out there like they used to.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, because they don't want to pick up that lapse time. That's why a lot of these policies, if you do have a lapse in your coverage, it happens every now and then, billing mistake or something like that, or you have to sign a no loss statement saying that, hey, I did not have any losses during this period to this period where my insurance wasn't in force.
Gotcha.
You know, so that's something to really think about as well.
Yeah. So, and that's as easy as, like you say, the certificate will have the agency's name and contact information on it.
Correct.
So just to be as simple as picking up the phone and saying, hey, I have a certificate from this insured. Is it still in effect?
Yeah.
And go from there.
And another thing is that I like to do is I say, have your agent send it to my email. So it's coming from the agent's office or agency. It may not be the agent, it may be a CSR.
Sure.
Which most certificates are handled by CSRs.
Yeah.
But it's coming from the agency. Well, that agency is not going to send me a copy of an insurance if it's not enforced.
That's not enforced.
Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of me collecting a big bundle of certificates at first and me passing it out to every homeowner that I do work for,
sure,
it's coming from my agency.
Yeah.
So they don't have to question, hey, is my policy enforced?
Well, and that's something that we do is that when we get a request for a certificate, we pass it on to our contact in your office and they handle it all. So it's actually a little bit more convenient on our end too. And that we have one point of contact, because sometimes if it's a longer project so say it starts in November, but it doesn't finish till January or February, that's two different policies. Because the way ours end at the end of the year. And so now that homeowner or that commercial client now has a contact that they can reach out directly and say, we need a new updated certificate of insurance. So it makes it easier all the way around.
And then even on the renewal list, we go over our agency. I can't speak for every agency, but our agency keeps track of every certificate we send out for that client. So at the end of the year, I sit down with Joe and I say, hey, are you doing work for these guys? And he's like, yes. I will go ahead and send out the renewal certificate so they have that in their file for Joe's business. So he's not bombarded with them all at once saying, hey, your insurance expired, we need a new update. We already do that for you.
And it's incredibly convenient on our end because you do at the first of the year, you start having all these different, commercial clients say, I need an updated certificate. Whether or not you did work for them before, if you're on their roster, if you're on their client roll, they're going to ask for updated certificate of insurance. So the fact that you guys do that takes a weight off of us for sure. So, but from a homeowner's perspective, so they've asked for a certificate of insurance and they've made sure that it has, the general liability, the commercial auto, and the workman's compensation, and they've called to confirm that the policy's in place. Is there anything else that they should be doing?
No, that I would always check references too.
Yeah.
When we have hail claims, there's a bunch of contractors that come into the area.
Sure.
And they may be there one day and they're gone the next.
Yeah.
And their work's not guaranteed.
Sure.
And so that's something else to think about, is not just make sure they have insurance, because they definitely need that. But make sure their reputation and their quality work is up to your standards.
Sure.
Don't just hire someone and move on. You got to make sure you're in it for a long haul, because you're going to be seeing that fence or you're going to be seeing that roof every day that you pull into your house.
You bet. You bet you are. Absolutely. And we've talked about that in other videos. Yeah, you want to get references. I usually like asking for new references and old references. That way, because, with fencing, you see guys that they'll build a fence, or you see a fence that's brand new and it looks great, but 2 years later, it might not look the best. So asking for older references might also help too, to try to say, well, boy, when they built the fence, it looked great. But now I had this problem with the gate and they won't call me back. And actually, I can't get anyone to return an email or anything. So asking for new references and old references might be a good idea.
Correct.
Now, Blake, let me ask you, so would it be weird, would it be odd if a contractor had two different certificates? I've seen this sometimes where they'll have one certificate for, say, workman's comp, and they'll have a different certificate for their general liability and auto.
And that's where you see it a lot. Is sometimes a market does not have the work comp carriers like we talked about.
Sure.
And they can write the general liability and the auto policy, but they can't write the work comp.
Sure.
So you'll see a certificate come from another agency with the workers'
that does have the workman's compensation.
Correct. So, and that's like we talked about. Every agency is different. Some people have markets, a lot of markets that will be able to do that industry, and some don't.
Sure.
So you'll see that quite a bit on especially these one man shows that have a little general liability policy with their personal lines policy, and they also have a little commercial policy.
Sure.
But they don't have the work comp carrier, so they go out to another agency to get the work comp.
Right, the workers' compensation. And that's perfectly fine.
That
shouldn't be a red flag.
Nope.
That's perfectly normal. Now, you'd want to check with both certificates.
Agencies.
Yeah,
that's right.
You want to check with both of them just to make sure. And I only say that because we've seen that occasionally, and it's perfectly fine. I wouldn't want a homeowner to see that and think that was abnormal or that was weird.
That's totally normal, especially in our industry. And sometimes you have a policy in place, and the agent leaves, and they try to reach and can't get coverage, and so they reach out to another one, place the workers' compensation with them, and it's been 3 years, since they reviewed their policies, and they have 2 different agents, and they don't even know one of the agents, but they're still getting certificates, and they're still insured.
Sure. So the best piece of advice would be just to call each agent that's on that particular
that agency. Yep. Very good.
So let's see. We've got a few more. So Jose was just following up that his fence was approximately 2,000 foot, and it was around $8,000 just for the materials.
Wow.
So at fencing, we've talked about this in other videos. Fencing material right now is incredibly crazy. So we had a notice last week from one of our steel producers. They're going up 5% in November 1st, 5% December 1st, and 8% January 1st.
Wow.
And you might add those up and go, well, that's 18%. No, the way they worded that was that it's compounding.
Yep.
So it's actually like 19.01% or something to that effect. So it's not only wood, unfortunately, that's going up. It's also the steel product. Understand general liability things that job site insurance will cover. What unexpected things or risks will insurance help with? That's a great question.
Yeah.
So like outside the normal, are there unexpected things that insurance could cover?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you have it. And
sure.
That's why we talked about that umbrella.
Yeah.
If your primary insurance doesn't cover it, hopefully your umbrella will kick in and protect you. I don't know if she's from a residence side or from a commercial side, but if you're on the commercial side, that's why we always recommend that umbrella policy.
Well, and it's what it sounds like is like the general liability policy would cover things that no one's thinking about. Yeah. When you lay an extension cord out to run a power tool, you're not thinking that Miss Smith might be walking out her side door that she's never used while you've been there, but she walked out and tripped and fell.
Yep.
You're not thinking about that. Or if there's job site debris that hasn't been cleaned up yet, and someone trips on the debris and has a claim, I think that's really what general liability and the umbrella policy are for.
Yep.
It's for the unexpected issues that no one thought about.
That's right. That you're liable.
That's right. Yeah. So. Very good. Great question. All right. And for those of you that have been live with us before, Jackson's watching. Jackson's my little boy, my little tank. Hello, Jackson. Good seeing you.
I hope he's enjoying the baseball cards.
Yeah, not yet. So no, they are safely stored. Well, Blake, I think we've done a pretty good job of covering really anything, really everything I had. Do you have any addition, anything I might have missed?
Well, I just want to talk kind of insurance and fence related.
Okay. Yeah, you bet.
We talked about just some claim scenarios for a homeowner on their own privacy fence. When you get a phone call and says, "Hey, Joe, my neighbor's fence fell down on my fence."
Yeah.
Are you already reaching out and saying, "Hey, call your insurance agent, get it turned in"? What's the process for you guys on your side? Do you wait till the adjuster comes out, or do you give a bid first? I mean, on my side, we see bids normally, and they correspond with the adjusters, and we kind of step back because we're the agent.
Sure.
So it's between the adjuster and the contractor that's fixing the problem.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty typical, and we've seen it both ways. Sometimes in our area, usually it's a wind damage. So high winds in the spring, tornado winds come through, or hail, and you see hail a lot in the spring. So we'll get a call. Sometimes the call will say, "Hey, the storm that came through last night blew my fence over. I need you guys to come fix it." And usually the first question is, have you reached out to your insurance agent? They need to be in the loop. Even if you're not going to claim it, it's good for them to at least know.
Exactly.
This damage occurred. I'm handling it, that sort of thing. To Jose's point, that now they know that there is a new fence.
Correct.
But a lot of times, as Jose alluded to, fence is expensive. And so a lot of times it turns into a claim. And then at that point, like you said, we don't typically deal with the agent. We deal with the adjuster.
Yep.
So either we'll present a proposal, and then the homeowner will say, well, the adjuster was out and they saw this, this, and this. That was different than the proposal, or vice versa. Or they'll say the appraiser has already been out and this is his appraisal, and what, can you give us a proposal for the work that he's seen? And usually there's a little give and take on both ends, because the appraisers are seeing, how many houses in a day, especially after a major event. That's all these guys and gals are doing for days on end. And so there's things they might have overlooked that me as a professional I see. And, so we'll reach out and say, well, in our proposal, we also covered, we also replaced this and this. And they're usually generally pretty good to work with.
And that's a good point, Joe, right there, is make sure that you're on top of the claim. And if a professional is advising you that, hey, there's more damage than what adjusted for this claim, that you have the responsibility to reach out to your adjuster. And Joe, you probably reach out to the adjuster as the professional there and say, hey, this is what I saw. And the adjuster and the insurance carrier wants to make it right. So they're gonna come and talk to the professional and say, hey, actually, we agree. You're right. It's going to be $2,000 more than what we projected. Sure, we'll get it covered.
Yeah, and that's something that's come up several times. And so what we'll typically do is, if we see something outside the scope of the adjuster had given, is we'll take some pictures. Here's what we're seeing. So usually we'll call and ask them for their email. We'll send them the email. Here's what we've seen. That's why our proposal is a bit more than what what you've adjusted for, and kind of try to come to an agreement that way. Here's the thing, Blake, is I really want guys to know, and gals out there listening, is like, adjusters are people too. You know what I mean? Is they're doing their job, right? And their job isn't to, try to limit the exposure of the company as much as possible. That's right. But that's kind of what you hear people say. They're just trying to do their job, and their job is to assess the damage that they see. And they're seeing so much damage when when high winds or hail come through. They're seeing so much damage in a day. They're human, and humans are going. I make mistakes daily. I can't expect someone else not to make any mistakes. And so a lot of times when we do that, so we'll take pictures and we'll just write a brief explanation. Here's what I've seen, or here's some things that you saw the immediate damage, but there's a few things that will also have to be replaced when we're replacing that damage, that are tied into the damage. And generally they're pretty easy to work with. Sometimes they want to meet back out just so they can see it, have a good feel for what's going on. A lot of times, the pictures are sufficient. They say, all right, I understand. I do see that damage. I don't know how I missed it, but I'll include it in the, revised adjustment, and I'll send it over.
That's a good point also, is that's why you reach out to professionals. A reputable company, because adjuster's going to listen to someone that's local, that's been around for a long time, that has been doing this industry, and it's not a fly-by-night company coming in and saying, no, it's $5,000 more than what you adjusted for. And they don't see eye to eye. So that's why it's always good to do your research, reach out to a reputable company like you guys is, and listen to them. That's right. So and we're kind of coming into fall and winter, but spring will be upon us soon. And spring brings all the damage. So so from a homeowner's perspective, if you do have damage, it's always good to first reach out to your agent, let them know so that they can get the process started, because sometimes it's not immediate. It's not the next day someone is going to be out. So the sooner you can start, the better. And then reach out to, a professional or 2 to 3 professionals is usually what I recommend. Is reaching out to, some qualified professionals, in your local professionals in your area. I'm glad you brought up the local aspect. Well, and also, you can turn it into your insurance agent, and if it's below your deductible, it's not going to hurt you. It doesn't go against you as a claim because you're paying it out of your pocket. The wind and hail deductibles now that we're seeing in our area, we're starting to see percentages. It's not just $1,000 deductible anymore. You could see a 2% wind and hail deductible on some of these houses or commercial properties. And that can be significant if the building value is high. So it's 2% of the building value. So sometimes the expenses may be under the deductible if it's a wind caused damage. So it might as well the homeowner or the commercial building owner pay it out of pocket and then not go against the insurance.
And the agent's there to help in that determination.
Exactly.
Right? The agent's there to say, well, you do have your standard deductible, but there is a wind and hail deductible of 2% or whatever's in your area, and because they're the professional in that realm. So now, Blake, let me ask you this. So we've talked about storm damage. Sometimes if there's winds and hail high enough to damage a fence, it's probably damaged some other things on the property, whether it's siding or roofing, things like that. So, and I'm sure this is going to vary policy to policy, but in general, would the fence be part of the claim of, say, if the roof also was damaged?
It'll be a per occurrence base.
Okay.
So majority of the policies are like that.
Okay.
And so it will be covered. The roof, the siding, the windows, and the fencing will all be one deductible.
Okay.
They'll be all categorized as one. Now it's all, you need to talk to your agent,
right?
Because each policy is written a little different.
Sure.
But that's something that you need to review with your agent. Then you'll know up front that, hey, if it's not that way, then I'll have multiple deductibles. If it is that way, then I only have one deductible.
Sure.
And that's something just to put back for.
And they'll help you kind of navigate that process, figure that out.
And another thing that Joe and I were talking about earlier today is, what if the neighbor's tree falls on the fence? Is that my responsibility? And really, it's looked at that it's an act of God.
Sure.
So it is covered under your homeowner's policy. It's not your neighbor's responsibility. Now, if there's a dead tree on the neighbor's premise and you've sent them papers saying, hey, you need to remove this, it's leaning and it's deteriorating and it's going to fall on my fence, and you have proof of that, then it can kind of go back to your neighbor's liability for not getting it taken care of. But majority of the trees are just going to fall down from a windstorm, and they think, oh, my neighbor's responsible. It's his tree that caused the damage, and that's not the case.
Yeah, we do see that from time to time. Especially in the spring when the ground's really wet and we get high winds. It pushes a lot of trees over, and we'll hear that occasionally. It's like, well, my fence is damaged. I need a bid because it was my neighbor's tree, and they're going to be paying for it.
That's right.
Well, maybe not. Probably not. Unless your neighbor was out there sawing it down when the wind event happened. Like, I don't know. But that's probably is going to vary, again, state to state, that sort of thing. You'd want to reach out to your local agent. That's right. Well, Blake, like I said, I appreciate it. If someone's watching this and wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
You can email me to bwixson, which our names are on there. So bwixson at PJC, so Peter Jack Charlie, insurance.com. And I can answer any questions that you guys have, or you can call us at the office. It's 417-833-3800.
Very good. Blake, like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you being a great agent for me and my business. You and I have known each other for quite a long time.
Yeah, we go way back.
And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Very good.
Appreciate you.
Well, guys, I appreciate you guys for sticking around, watching the live view, and interacting with us. If you do have any questions after this broadcast is ended, drop them in the comments below. I'll keep an eye on it. If it's an insurance related question, I'll probably forward it to Blake. But leave your comments or leave your questions in the comments below. Again, if you found this live broadcast enjoyable, helpful, or heck, even entertaining, consider giving it a like. If you're new here, we'd ask you to also consider subscribing. If you do subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get notified each and every week when we have new content available. But for now, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, here with Blake, the insurance expert, wishing you a great day.